Tonight's debate is: should we impose a health tax on all fast food and beverages deemed to be unhealthy? Let me repeat that. Should we impose a health tax on all fast food and beverages deemed to be unhealthy? And like I said, proposing this debate tonight is the University of Zululand, and opposing the debate tonight is University of KwaZulu-Natal. But before we get into the debate, I want to give our speakers of today's debate an opportunity to introduce themselves in the order within which they will be speaking in. So we'll hear from the first speaker of the proposing team, that is University of Zululand, the second speaker, as well as the third speaker. And then we'll hear from introduction from the first opposition speaker from University of KwaZulu-Natal, the second opposing speaker, and the third opposing speaker. Well, let's start with the University of Zululand. Go ahead, the first speaker of the team, introduce yourself and tell us what your name is, what you're studying, and what year you're in.
Good evening. My name is Leonard Balele Malbonga Shongwe. I am studying computer science and mathematics, and I'm currently in my second year. Thank you.
Thank you. Second speaker from the proposition team.
Greetings to the house. My name is Miami Zulu. I'm studying law and I'm doing my final year. Thank you.
Fantastic. And the third speaker from University of Zululand.
I'll also be the third speaker from the University of Zululand, Miami.
Okay. Let's move on over to University of KwaZulu-Natal. Who's the first speaker? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Yushdeep Hogel. I am a first year student at UKZN and I'm studying applied maths and data science.
Fantastic. Second speaker from the opposing team.
Hello, everybody. My name is Liam Mutit, and I am studying architecture at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, particularly Harvard College. Thank you, guys.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to take a very short sting on this, and on the other side of this, I'll reintroduce the topic, and the first speaker from the proposing team will begin today's debate.
SMS SAFM now on 41391. This week, today on SAFM.
And today we debate the topic, should there be a health tax on fast food and beverages deemed to be unhealthy? Without any further ado, I now hand over to the first speaker from the proposing side. Go take it away.
Good evening once again. This House would impose a health tax on all fast food and beverages deemed to be unhealthy. Now, I would like to define health tax, fast food, and beverages deemed to be unhealthy. Firstly, a health tax is a targeted excise duty or sin tax levied by the government on specific goods whose consumption is deemed to have a negative impact on society. Fast food are foods that are energy dense, nutrition poor, and prepared and served quickly. This may include certain burgers, fried chicken, pizza with processed meat. Moving on to beverages deemed unhealthy, we have sodas, sweetened juices, energy drinks, sport drinks, and also soft drinks. I would like to say by health tax, we mean a targeted excise duty, not value-added tax, designed to discourage the consumption of harmful products. Also, a health tax, I would like to say that a health tax is a necessary and effective tool to combat South Africa's specific public health crisis, and it also reduces the burden on our healthcare system and promotes healthier choices. Therefore, we are strictly limiting this debate to South Africa. No point made that does not fall under the concept or the restriction of South Africa will be recognized. Firstly, I would like to give you the why we support this motion. I would like to explain the South African health crisis. Firstly, we have one of the highest obesity rates in sub-Saharan Africa. 70% of females are overweight and 30% of males are overweight. We struggle with both infectious diseases like TB and the rapid rise in NCDs like diabetes, heart diseases, and hypertension. All of these are driven by poor diet. The public healthcare system is always overwhelmed and cannot sustain the cost of treating preventable NCDs. The key word there is preventable NCDs. This also prevents exploitation of the poor. Unhealthy food is often the cheapest and most accessible in poor communities, limiting the real choice, limiting the free will that you have to go buy healthy food. Now, our policy, I would like to focus on our policy and tell you what we are targeting. Now, we're not targeting all foods. We're targeting products scientifically deemed unhealthy, like products that are high in sugar, high in salt, saturated fats, and low in nutrition. Now, who is this going to be managed by? It is going to be managed by the Department of Health. When effective immediately. We cannot wait while lives of the public are at stake. We'd like to propose an initial tax rate that is significant to change behavior, but not so high that it should be crippling. 20% of the product cost. Now we will use. We have a strategy on how to use the revenue. Funds will be used to subsidize healthy foods to make them more affordable. We'll also invest in health promotion and education campaigns, strengthen the public care system, specifically for NCD prevention and treatment. And also, we'd like to improve the health infrastructure in underserved township and rural areas. Also, just to make it clear, all this tax is going straight to the healthcare system or the healthcare sector to avoid misallocation of funds, and also making it easier to spot corruption within the healthcare department, since we know that we're living in a very treacherous world where corruption is a big matter, especially in South Africa. But to combat this, I bring proof. We bring the health promotion levy, aka the sugar tax. The existing sugar tax on sugary beverages led to a significant reduction, over 30% actually, in sugar consumption from soft drinks. Also, companies changed their recipes to less sugar to avoid the tax, making products healthier without actually banning them. We saw this in Coca-Cola when they make Coke Zero, when they made Coke no sugar. We also saw it in Pepsi when they made Pepsi Light. All these companies can actually make beverages that fall under healthy beverages without banning the other ones, meaning that there is no point that is going to be made on the unemployment rate increasing or people losing their jobs, because a restructuring of a company is always happening in South Africa, meaning that people will not lose their jobs, but in fact, they will keep them and perform the same duties just in a different way under a new recipe. Also, this shows that targeted tax successfully influences both consumer behavior
1 minute.
and industry practice. For my last point, I would like to touch on moral and economic imperative. As the government, we have a duty to protect the people's health. Everybody has a right to health. In Section 27, they speak about the right to health. What does that say about us, the government, that does not take action when we see that action is needed to stop everybody that is being obese? Because as the government, we know for a fact that a healthy community is a prospering community, is a community that has a brighter future and promises that everybody coming in the next generation will be better and will live better lives, because we have prevented NCDs. We also have prevented every virus that is spreading because of poor diet. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the first speaker from the proposing side, representing University of Zululand. I do want to remind speakers that protected time does end after a minute, so engagements are welcome thereafter. We will now be joined by the first speaker from the opposing side, the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Take it away.
We have a duty to protect the public's health. But on side proposition, they show no evidence of even making any differences. Okay, so fundamentally, they misunderstand what's going on in this motion. Okay, they try to define fast food, they fail. They don't even define what they mean by unhealthy. What does that mean, scientifically deemed unhealthy? They give us no parameters for what is and what is not unhealthy, and therefore everything they say can be negated. Because realistically, how are we meant to create laws taxing something that affects people's daily lives? Okay, and you're giving us no parameters for how you're planning on doing this. You're giving us no parameters for what is and is not going to be included in this tax. Okay, you say that South Africa is facing a health crisis. We agree. We don't say that this isn't a problem. However, creating a tax on these unhealthy foods isn't going to do anything. And we have seen this time and time again. The sin tax hasn't done anything to reduce people's consumption of sugar in other countries. Okay, so what makes the proposition side think that it's going to make any difference in South Africa? Okay, so firstly, they concede that fast food is the cheapest, yet they want to add a tax to make it more expensive for society's most vulnerable, and that is lower middle class and people living in poverty. Okay, you concede that they turn to fast food because it is cheaper than most healthy alternatives. So would you rather these people have maybe slightly unhealthy food or just starve? Like, that doesn't make sense. Okay, so you also cite Coke Zero is healthier than normal Coke. And what metric? Under what metric is it healthier? You don't provide us any metric. Yes, it has reduced sugar, but it also has xylitol. Okay, is that a trade-off that you're willing to make? Okay, considering that sugar is actually proven to be healthier than xylitol. Okay, so now additionally, taxing won't even discourage a lot of people from eating fast food, especially since most rich people will just pay the tax. So it really has no bearing on public health, okay? So if the goal is public health, then the government can create subsidies for fruit, vegetables, and healthy meals, and that is proven to work better than punishing the poor with high prices, okay? Additionally, South Africa's fast food market was valued at $2.7 billion in 2018, and it's estimated to reach $4.9 billion by 2026. Okay, this is exponential market growth, and it's increasing 7.9% compounded annually. This is a large market. It's a lucrative market, and this creates employment for so many South Africans. Okay, if we're de-incentivizing people from going and supporting these establishments, okay, we're also leading to so many South Africans losing their jobs. Okay, and now fast food in South Africa is the largest food service in sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, additionally, 60% of South Africans live in urban areas. Okay, more than half of them rely on fast foods, maybe not daily, but they rely on it. Okay, and now why are we punishing them, okay, for eating what is being made available to them? Okay, if this was really about public health, okay, you wouldn't be punishing people for eating what's made available. Okay, additionally, okay, the concept of unhealthy food being taxable, okay, is such a poor point because it's such a subjective metric. Okay, what is unhealthy to some people may not be considered unhealthy to other people. Okay, and then where do we draw the line? Okay, does that mean that people selling bunny chows or quotas from small businesses, does that count as unhealthy food? And if so, we are not only de-incentivizing investment from international companies, we are also directly affecting small businesses, small South African businesses, okay? And that's just a net negative, okay? So honestly, panel, there's only one way in which this debate can fall. It has to fall to opposition, because proposition has provided no metric. They provided no substantive definition for what they think is healthy or unhealthy. They also completely contradict themselves continuously, okay? Because taxes don't stop unhealthy eating, it just shifts it, okay? Additionally, people can just turn to untaxed substitutes, okay? Homemade fried food is just as unhealthy as store-bought fried food, okay? If the goal is health, subsidies are the way to go, okay? Now, additionally, they can say that the revenue pays for healthcare and
1 minute.
nutrition education, but that revenue only comes if people keep buying the unhealthy food, meaning the government is now financially dependent on bad health choices. That's a complete contradiction from their side. If revenue is the goal, there are fairer sources of taxation that don't punish people for being poor. Okay, so panel, realistically, there's only one way in which this debate can fall, and that is to side opposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the first speaker on side opposition. We now hand the floor to the second speaker on side proposition. If you've just joined us, the topic for today's debate between the University of Zululand as well as the University of KwaZulu-Natal is the following. Should we place a health tax on all fast food and beverages deemed unhealthy? And on the proposing side is the University of Zululand. On the opposing side is the University of KwaZulu-Natal. As you listen to this debate, send us through your WhatsApp voice note reactions on 0614 104 107. 0614 104 107. You can also tweet us. It is at Oliver_speaking on Twitter and Oliver Dixon on Facebook, and I'll engage you over there as you listen to this debate. You've heard from the first speaker from side proposition. You've heard from the first speaker from side opposition. You'll now hear from the second speaker on side proposition. Take it away.
Greetings to the House. It's Miami again. So I'll begin with my rebuttals, then I'll move on to straining me and my partner's cases. So it seems like the first speaker of opposition did not listen to my partner whatsoever, because she came and rebutted things that were irrelevant and that were not said by my partner. Firstly, she comes and speaks about the fact that we're making people hungry. However, my partner had specifically stated that this particular tax will not be value added, right? Meaning that she missed that point. Moving on, she also mentioned the fact that we did not define what unhealthy food is and what is not, which once again was the first thing my partner came to the podium and did define words for you, what unhealthy food is and what beverages deemed unhealthy are. Moving on, my partner told you that she also came and told us that we did not mention that how we're going to be taxing these people, how are we planning on doing this. We told you, meaning once again, she wasn't listening to my partner's points. However, I hope that adjudicators, you did hear my partner's points and you did take them into consideration, because I will not repeat them just because the first speaker of opposition did not listen to my partner. Moving on, she mentioned that this is not going to do anything, and she mentioned the fact that in other countries it's no good, which was a lie, because we have the likes of Mexico, where sugar tax was increased in 2024, and they saw a 12% decline in sugary beverage purchase, meaning that her information was not relevant and it was not true. Moving on, she told us that we are now making the people from lower and middle class suffer, which is not true, because once again, we told you that it is not value-added tax, meaning that we will not increase the price that the people are buying the foods for. However, the companies are the one who are going to be facing this particular health tax. Moving on, she mentioned that the issue that regular Coke is not regular I mean, the zero Coke is as unhealthy as the usual Coke, which is not true. Once again, basically, she came and lied to us. She moved on to mention that SA's fast food market is producing $2.7 billion and is expected to produce 4.9 billion. So are they basically prioritizing increasing the market over prioritizing the lives of people? And once again, who is going to work in these companies that you speak of if we have unhealthy people? If we have people suffering from diabetes, etc. Moving on, she mentioned that some people rely on unhealthy eating. Once again, I'm showing to the house that she wasn't listening to my partner, because my partner had mentioned that we will use this tax to subsidize fresh foods, meaning we're increasing this to decrease that, so poor people can actually afford to buy healthy and fresh food. Moving on, she mentioned that we had contradiction. We contradicted ourselves, which is not true. And she told us that people can easily turn to other ways of eating unhealthy food. They can easily buy chicken from Spar and go fry it at home and make it unhealthy chicken. Fine, that's okay. But we will be decreasing the intake. The intake decreases either way. Even if the person takes the chicken and goes fries it at home, the consumption rate still decreases, because now companies are producing healthier chickens, right? Moving on to me and my partner's cases, right? Basically, we would impose this because it reduced financial burden in the government. In South Africa, it is a constitutional right to be provided with healthcare services, of which the government caters for. Since we have the likes of public clinics and hospitals, unlike other countries like America, where medical care is not free, South Africa therefore needs to impose such taxes, because one may wonder, where does the South African government get the money for free public health care? From taxes such as payroll tax. So instead of increasing payroll tax, we should rather have this health tax put into play, whereby companies are going to be held accountable for the damage that they do to the society. Moving on, this will also decrease the likes of medical expenses, and also decreases sicknesses such as NCDs, etc. What way to implement this than to impose a health tax? Notes adjudicators that the first speaker gave us no points whatsoever. She just simply came and rebutted everything that my partner said, meaning that they do not have a case at this point. Maybe the second speaker will come and raise points. Moving on, they had no policy whatsoever, but they were quick to judge our policy. Moving on, I would like to mention that despite the decreasing burden on the government, this initiative will also reduce the likelihood of consumption by people, leading to healthier foods, which will lead to healthier people and a more productive country, right? And as we all know, hospitals are full in South Africa. The decrease of consumption of unhealthy food will lead to open spaces in hospitals, which means people suffering from severe illnesses will now have access to medical care, right? Moving on, there are other ways of preventing or reducing this rather than imposing. However, they haven't been tested nor proven to be effective, whereas we have seen this initiative work wonders in other countries. So this is why as South Africa we would impose it. Moving on. The issue of burdening income households, basically, as I had mentioned, we basically increase the tax, or rather, we basically have health tax in order to subsidize fresh food, so that the poor can actually afford health food, rather than being forced to go out and buy unhealthy food because that's what they afford. And also, Team Proposition was advocating for the fact that. Thank you.
And thank you very much to the second speaker from Team Proposition. We will now welcome to the podium the second speaker from Team Opposition. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leah Mutin, and I will be starting my debate in 3, 2, 1. We find side propositions debate inherently problematic. It's mainly because of the fact that they shift the blame onto the people who are the consumers rather than the people that are providing the food in the first place. We think that obesity rates are not high because people choose to be obese. We think it's not because people to choose to lead an unhealthy life. We think that people have, number one, a lack of education, and secondly, then is because they do not have the economic standpoint to even purchase these luxury, quote unquote, healthy foods in the first place. That is why we're winning this debate from the get go, right? But I've already dealt with this response in my introduction. I think it is fairly intuitive. But we tell you then that their policy in terms of quote unquote subsidizing healthy foods doesn't make sense, mainly because of the fact that we don't think that this problem is going to help people when they choose to buy things that they don't know that are bad for them. So for example, if I don't know that burgers are bad for me, I'm going to continuously purchase burgers, even if it is something that is unhealthy. We also don't think that people from rural areas are going to discern whether this food, the chemical compounds reacting in this food to make it are something that is completely bad for our health, right? So the basic policy that we run within this debate is, number one, use the government's money, who is taxing the people in the first place, to have some sort of education, to have some sort of reform with the companies that they're trading with in the first place. So that means, for example, the food industry has to be pressured upon. So that is why we're winning this debate in the first place. But let's move on to the actual key issues in debate. Number one, in terms of exacerbating economic inequalities, right? In terms of food consumption. Number one, what does even food consumption look like, right? We think food consumption looks like two major categories. Number one, in terms of like our needs, right? So the things that we need to survive. So for example, water, vegetables, dairy, and other products like those, right? And secondly, then in terms of the wants, which looks like dairy, other dairy products, meat, desserts, and secondary and tertiary items, right? They tell us to not care about that in the first place, but this is how the tax metric is going to be looking like, right? We tell you then that a lot of the times people aren't able to afford these quote unquote luxury items, mainly because of their tax or economic bracket. So that looks like, for example, if it's my birthday, that is the only day that I'm going to be able to buy a cake, because society tells me that I should be prioritizing my money and saving my money for more healthier and more like cheaper like opportunities. So for example, eating more vegetables opposed to meat. That is inherently problematic, panel, and this is why we tell you so. It's mainly because of the fact that you force people to buy things that don't give them fulfillment and don't give them pleasure. Why is that problematic? It's problematic because High Proposition's line says that because you're from a certain background and you can't afford these luxury items, you shouldn't be able to experience the pleasure that you get from it. So for example, when you do impose these taxes on hamburgers, for example, that person in the rural society will never be able to experience the pleasure from getting that, mainly because of the fact that society deems it to be unhealthy. The second issue then is in like how people find ways to purchase these things anyways. So for example, in COVID-19, when there was a ban on sinful like items such as cigarettes and alcohol, people still found ways to like sell cigarettes underground. And secondly, then they still found ways of how to distill alcohol on their own from their homes. We tell you then that when it comes to food, it's much more easier to just buy the ingredients and make the unhealthy food yourself. We tell you then that this sort of policing of what you're eating isn't going to work, mainly because of the fact that you don't know how people are going to eat this and the frequency of which they're consuming it. And the last issue then, and this is a very important issue, is the idea of intersectionality. So that's to say that certain foods are really bad for you only if you're eating it frequently. And a lot of food that are deemed healthy by these companies that are inherently capitalistic tell you it's healthy so that they can gain more money. So for example, people believe that fruits are healthy, but if you eat fruits more frequently, the amount of sugar that you're intaking is going to be bad for you. We tell you then that the government or whoever they tell us that is going to impose this tax doesn't really have the nuanced information of what is really unhealthy or not. So that looks like, for example, people are going to be deprived of the right to their autonomy. Why do we think this is so important in this debate, and why do we think we're winning then? We're winning because at the end of the day, you are using your own money to buy the food that gives you the most amount of pleasure. Even if you know and you are educated on our side that this is bad and you still choose to purchase this terrible, unhealthy food, that is fine because it's your own money and it is your own life, and we aren't going to shame you out of society because we think we're more ideologically pure because we're quote unquote healthy, and we're doing great things in society. We tell you we're valuing fulfillment, we're winning this debate. Otherwise, we tell you then that you should side with side opposition.
1 minute.
Mainly that we give you the correct policy to take. We tell you we shouldn't be policing people who don't even know what they're taking in the first place. We tell you educate people, number one, and mitigate things that are propagated in the food industry, reform these things, and actually engage with the core issue, which is poverty, which is the reason why people resort to things like this in the first place. That is why we're winning. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the second speaker on side opposition. What are your thoughts on the debate thus far? You've heard from the first two speakers from side proposition and the first two speakers from side opposition. The topic, if you've just joined us, is that should we place a health tax on all fast food and beverages that are deemed unhealthy? Send us your WhatsApp voice notes on your reflections on the debate thus far. The number is 0614 104 107 0614 104 107, and we'll take some of your reactions later. We might be able to squeeze in one or two of your calls a little bit later on 086 000 2032 086 000 2032. We're going to take a very, very short break. On the other side of this, we hear from the third speaker on side proposition.
You are listening to SAFM Radio this Heritage Month. This week, today, Fridays, 6 to 7 p.m.
Should we place a health tax on all fast food and beverages deemed unhealthy? From side proposition, we have the University of Zululand. From side opposition, we have the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We now open up the debate to the third speaker from the University of Zululand, the proposition side. Take it away.
Okay, greetings once again. I will start with my rebuttals and then I'll move on to strengthening me and my partner's cases once again. So basically, the second speaker of opposition basically comes and tells us that their policy is that we mustn't police people, we must deal with poverty instead. Which one is better to you listening? Is it which one will work faster or better? Is it dealing with poverty or policing the people on what they eat? Moving on, he mentioned the fact that we should let people buy what they want for their own pleasure. It's fine because it's their money and it's their health, which is false. It is not fine. Once again, implying that the second speaker, once again, was not listening to me when I spoke, because I had specifically mentioned that in South Africa, we have public clinics and public hospitals, which are responsible when these people get NCDs, which these people use when they get the likes of diabetes, etc. They go to these public hospitals, which are financed by the government, meaning that it's the issue of saying it's their money and it's their health does not stand in this debate, because the government has to get involved once the person gets sick. Moving on, he mentioned the fact that we're depriving people of their rights to autonomy, etc. With rights come responsibilities, sir. Moving on, they mentioned the fact that in the olden days, people were banned from using alcohol. However, they bought the ingredients and made alcohol themselves. Kudos to you, sir. The type of alcohol that was made at homes by the people is actually healthy alcohol, which is the likes of sokam, umkomboti, if I might call it, which was healthy alcohol than the ones produced in shops, meaning that alcohol issue that you raised was also irrelevant to this debate. Moving on, he mentioned that there will be no fulfillment and no. Not taken, ma'am. He mentioned that there will be no fulfillment and no pleasure, because people who can't afford luxury items will now not be able to have them, etc. Once again, they did not listen to what me and my partner were saying. We basically told you that manufacturers of these unhealthy foods will be encouraged to make healthier options, meaning that if you are selling fried chips, instead of using tons of oil for frying those fried chips, you'd rather use an air fryer, which is a more healthier choice. Moving on, basically they told us nothing. Team opposition told us nothing that stood, and their policy, they are the ones who are supposed to be giving us a policy, but they didn't give us a policy whatsoever. They just said we must let people do as they please, which is not enough to win this debate. Moving on, they rebutted a few points that my partner had mentioned. However, the rebuttals did not stand. Moving on, we gave you a policy where we told you that we will use some of this tax value of this health tax towards investing in health promotion and education campaigns, which is the same thing that team opposition came and told you, meaning that team opposition initially is agreeing with us, because if he's saying that they must have education campaigns to
Point of information, Speaker.
Moving on, saying that they should have education campaigns. Where is the money for those education campaigns going to come from on opposition's perspective? Because we tell you that this money to promote these education campaigns and invest in health promotion will come from this tax that we are imposing on companies, right? Moving on, basically me and my partner win this debate because we gave you a sweet policy telling you who's going to do what, when, how, and why, which is what opposition team failed to do. I'll move on to strengthening me and my partner's cases, and then we will win this debate. Basically, my partner told you that in South Africa, we have the likes of the highest rates of obesity, right? And when you're obese, there's not really much that you can contribute to the economy. So we need healthy people in order to have a healthy country and a healthy environment, right? Moving on, this will empower individuals to make healthier choices, and it will lead to a prolonged and healthier life, because letting people do as they please will affect them. I'll take your POI, ma'am.
Okay, Speaker, again, you keep going on with what is and what is not unhealthy. You said they made it healthier alcohol. Healthier by what metric? You're not giving us a metric for what you consider unhealthy. So therefore, all of your points are null.
Okay, I'll note your point. So once again, speakers, please be adjudicators, please be aware that opposition insists on not listening
1 minute.
to us. I had mentioned that they made healthier alcohol. I had told you about sorghum. Sorghum is healthy. It doesn't. I told you umqombothi is healthy. We all know that. It's not rocket science. We all know umqombothi is healthier than going to the shop and buying Smirnoff. Moving on, I would like to redefine what unhealthy foods are. However, that's not relevant because okay, it's fine. I'll explain it. We mentioned that fast food are foods that are energy dense, poor in nutrition, and are prepared and served quickly, right? That is what we told you fast foods are. And then we mentioned what beverages deemed unhealthy are. We told you it's sodas, sweetened juices, energy drinks, sport drinks, and soft drinks, meaning that their questions towards whatever we are saying are not relevant and they do not stand. Moving on, having this tax will impact the country positively, because as I had mentioned, we're now producing healthier people who can do their work at a high level, meaning that we'll have less people taking sick leave because no one will be getting sick as they'll be consuming healthy food and fresh food, which is good for their health, right? Moving on. The issue, they keep on mentioning the issue that we're burdening low-income households. However, we told you that we are not increasing the prices. We are taxing the manufacturers, meaning we are increasing that to decrease that. Basically, we are increasing on unhealthy to decrease on healthy foods, right? Meaning that the poor can actually now afford healthy food and there's no need for them to consume unhealthy foods, right? Moving on, this will encourage innovation.
Time is up.
Manufacturers. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the third speaker from side proposition. We now open up to the third speaker from side opposition.
Okay, cool. That would be me. Let me just get my timer out. 1 sec. Reset. Okay, cool. I'd like to start in 3, 2, 1. Companies need an incentive for us to make a change. companies only care about the revenue that they make. No company is going to be incentivized to change the framework of how they produce things in the first place because the government of South Africa told them so. We don't think that companies care about the health of individuals, mainly because of the fact that their products are made to do one thing and one thing only. Number one is to please the consumers. So if it's something sweet and if it's something that I like and if it's something that meets my needs, I'm going to buy that. And secondly, then companies aren't going to care if you're paying for it. So end of the day, even if there are some sort of taxes on these companies, they're not likely to care about anybody's health. They're likely to just abide. But in your best case scenario, they're likely to opt out of the food industry because they're being taxed. Why would you want to be in a country and operate your business where you're being taxed for the same thing that you're supposed to be making? We don't think that this makes sense in terms of economics. But what is the major problem in this debate that we've been focusing on in today, right? Number one is like the obesity rates and why is something that is so important to be talking about. Secondly, then is the change that we want to make in society. And lastly, then is the economic inequalities that comes about. In terms of like the obesity rate, we've already told you that a lot of these people just don't know what is bad for them and what is good for them. So even if you are going to tax these companies, that's not going to make any change on the ground. So even if you open 50 more clinics, that's not going to change anything that is going to happen on the ground because people are still going to choose to buy the chips that they want to eat from the store. And even at that instance where you want to swear your line and say, well, actually, it's going to be more difficult for them to purchase these things because companies aren't going to be manufacturing it anymore, you also tell us that they're going to be distilling their own traditional beers. We're telling you that at the end of the day, there's still going to find roots around the problem to satisfy their needs. And we tell you then at that point, we can't micromanage and police people. Why is that so important in today's debate? It is because we care about the wants and the needs about the individuals. So at the end of the day, if you're a person that's an alcoholic and you choose to make your own beer, we aren't going to be policing you because of the fact that you aren't buying it from the shops and we don't have any sort of stats onto how are these people being obese in the first place. That is why it is more problematic on side proposition side, is because when you remove people from buying things from the market in the first place, you have no way of mitigating the effects that their consumption is having, right? And the next problem then is just like in terms of like subsidizing healthy foods, borrowing from one the other. We don't think that this is going to work, right? And that's not how economics works. One thing has to be triumphing over the other in order for it to be surviving. So that looks like, for example, certain food industries triumphing over others in order for it to get more people to buy from. So that looks like, for example, if the government is going to subsidize healthy foods, we think that these corporations are going to up their prices even more to compete. Because why would I want to buy a healthy food if the price of a chocolate is lower than the price of the healthy food in the first place? We tell you then that people at the end of the day are still using their autonomy, and this is a benefit that is something that is so symmetrical in this debate. Why is that important? It's because at the end of the day, you get your own money at the end of the month and you choose to do what you want with that money. Even if we tell you that that person is going to be obese because they're going to buy 50 chocolates and eat it in a week, that is fine because that is something that gives them fulfillment. That is fine because it's not harming their entire economy. It is harming them and they know it's harming them. And at any point in time, they can choose to not buy the chocolates, but they don't. Why? Because autonomy is something that is so important and exists in everybody. At the end of this debate, what have we learned? Number one, that we can't really determine what is healthy and what is not because of the frequency of consumption. Secondly, then, we think that the problem is not with the people's choice, it's about the information that is given to them or the lack thereof and the government's mandate. And lastly, then, is that you cannot subsidize a company or tax a company to change the way in which they produce things, mainly because of the fact that that isn't in their best interest. And we tell you, and to round up this debate, that people are going to find different ways of being unhealthy. We tell you, if you're going to have fruits and if you think in your mind that that is something that is healthy, you're wrong because fruits have a lot of sugar in it. And if you frequently get sugar in your diet, then that's not going to be good for you. That is why we're bringing this debate panel, because we give you the realistic standpoint of what South Africans look like. And we tell you we're going to be the best for them because we're giving you what they
1
want.
minute.
That is, thank you.
Okay, well, that brings to an end today's debate between the University of Zululand as well as the University of KwaZulu-Natal, taking on the topic: should we place a health tax on all fast food and beverages deemed unhealthy? You heard there from the University of Zululand in proposition, and you heard there from the University of KwaZulu-Natal there in opposition. And just to remind you, the debaters that debated in today's debate is Liam Muten as well as Vyashti Bogal from the University of KwaZulu-Natal on opposition. From proposition, you heard from Langalibalele Shongwe as well as Miami Zulu from the University of Zululand. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we have a listen at some of your WhatsApp voice notes, giving our judge an opportunity to put together his thoughts on the deliberation. Our adjudicator for this evening will be renowned debater himself and well-known South African political commentator Lieto Ntoba from the Central University of Technology. We're going to take a short break, give him some time to think about it, have a listen at your WhatsApp voice notes, and on the other side of that, Lieto will give us his outcome.
SMS SAFM now on 41391. The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Give us like a Rafiki one-liner.
Lanel, Pulapul, Simba, Kolasel. Tell me, who are you? No, here comes a person who says, who am I? I know who I am. Who are you?
Well, the storyteller is telling stories, John Carney.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. Find the podcast at safm.co.za. This week, today on SAFM.
And that was the debate. What are your thoughts on it? Send us your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. 0614 104 107. Let's have a listen to some of your WhatsApp voice notes that came through on our WhatsApp line.
Good evening, Oliver. Yeah, really interesting listening to these people debate on what is health food, fast food, convenience food, whatever it is, because that actually does that cover pizzas, today pizza sold in ShopRite, Checkers, Pick and Pay and everything where people manufacture it at home, chips being put into an air fryer. I mean, all of these things, you know, and I think they're creating an environment where there's going to be so much regulation that all the money that is saved or whatever it is going into policing the people and policing the environment and everything like that, that nothing's actually going to go to the health services. And, you know, really, people, what about sports persons that actually have fast food? That's actually great for them and everything because it gives them the energy. So are the healthy people going to be penalized and have to pay? I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking a Donald Trump taxation or tariffs on products like he's doing in America. We want to do on all our so-called fast food products. Mark from Cape Town.
Hi, Oliver. Thanks for the opportunity. Arguments sort of contradictive themselves in both parties, but the fact remains that the market thrives because of the demand, and the demand is perpetuated by the inequality which is so high in South Africa. So if one needs to eat something that tastes good, will eventually not afford the best prepared food, but the quick one, which is sort of a high in cholesterol and sugar or salt. So to solve these issues is government to introduce something which will help alleviate poverty in South Africa.
Sure, Oliver, anyway that passes those debaters' lips is a points on both proposing and opposing side. You know, they remind me of my heyday at the secondary the secondary school, who I was the best speaker. Always I'm telling you just like truth. Yes, health tax should be imposed on such fast food and beverages. Some of them cause chronic illnesses such as diabetes, high blood, and others. So, health tax should be imposed on such the items. Hence, there are no warning labels on some of these items. Good evening, lovely brother. Housing from Brazil.
And thank you very much for that. Well, we've got 2.5 minutes, and hopefully Lieto can give us his verdict and a breakdown in that short space of time. Lieto, our judge for today, and Lieto Ntoba from the Central University of Technology. Take it away.
Good evening, guys. Good evening, OD. Great debate, by the way. Very high level. So, the way I saw the debate is that a few questions needed to be answered, and there was agreement among the teams on two issues, right? So the two main issues that both sides agreed to that somehow must happen, that there must be an education of people, and then secondly, there must be a subsidy somehow towards healthy food. So firstly, those two I judged so that the side that best mechanizes the subsidy or the education would be the side that wins. But also they were contending a few issues, right? Two of the issues that they contended were firstly, what is this definition of healthy, and where that was well explained, that the debate would fall to them. But also, can a government tax for change? So can companies change when they're taxed? Which leads to another question that came up in contention with: will companies change, or will they opt out of an economy if taxed? And then lastly, the last two then is which of these options serve the poor and the country best? And then the last one is which side of the two serves pleasure and autonomy the most, right? And I didn't put much emphasis on that, but I think it was a point that arose and needed some kind of thinking over, right? So firstly, when you hear about the subsidizing of health and educating people, I believe that was well mechanized on the proposition side, right? Because the proposition then showed us how in their taxation method, that is how then they would propose that healthier foods be subsidized, but also how then you funnel that money also to health services in order to try and one, mitigate more people getting these the diseases that they mentioned, like diabetes and all of those, and how then that education would best be served by the money that's coming from the taxation rather than the general coffers of the public being used to service something that that could be preventable, but also that could be spread around in responsibility. I believe that the opposition didn't mechanize it well, even though they agreed that there was some kind of subsidy that needed to be given to healthy food. They do mention that the subsidy must come for healthy food, but even the proposition asks, where does the money come from? And none of it comes to the fore, right? And then, can you tax for change? And I think proposition also mechanizes that well to say, when a company is taxed, rather than opting out, the company usually innovates other options that could be within the law and outside of the tax bracket or the taxing issue or bracket. That's when they mentioned that even if you tax a company like Coca-Cola for their sugary beverage, they'll then come up with low sugar and no sugar options in order to fill the market and get to their bottom line again.
Yeah.
Which they will not renege on. So that also then answers the question of, will the company innovate out or opt out of the economy? And I think the proposition wins that part as well. And then the last one about pleasure, which, yes, is well served. The pleasure and autonomy is well served by the opposition, but it didn't prove that how considering pleasure and autonomy could override the other issues that the proposition, I think, took and mechanized very well. And so with all that being said and considered, the proposition takes this debate. Congratulations.
Congratulations to the University of Zululand, the proposing site, Miami Zulu, being the second speaker there from the opposition, from the team proposition from the University of Zululand, representing the team there. And of course, on the first speaker, Langalibalele Shongwe being the first speaker there. That brings us to the end of today's broadcast and debate. Congratulations to the University of Zululand. Hard won by them, and certainly hard fought as well by University of KwaZulu-Natal. We're 2 minutes over time. My apologies for that. And so that's where we ended for today. Springboks up against New Zealand tomorrow. My score prediction, gonna be a very, very close one. 3 tries to 2, Springboks winning that one. It's good night for now. Cheers.
DA gives ultimatum to Stellenbosch HR manager and accused in Kroonstad murder case released on bail. Good evening. The DA caucus in the Stellenbosch municipality in the Western